Of course, today we're talking about groundwork, which is something that I'm so passionate about. It's something that helps me with every single horse that I ride and train. And I know some of you guys have already enrolled in the Masterclass, which is super exciting. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit at the end after I teach you guys a lot of awesome tips about groundwork. The other thing I'm going to be doing at the end is I'm going to give away my favorite rope halter. So this is like one of my favorite rope halters. I've used it some. It's still in really good condition. And this is really an essential tool that you should have in your barn to help you with groundwork. So we'll be giving that away at the end today. I want to start out with a story about my horse, Geronimo. And he was the second horse I ever had. I got him when I was 14 and Geronimo was 4 years old, which is not really ideal to have a green young rider with a green horse. But I was young. My parents didn't really know that much about horses, so it seemed like a good idea. We got him here and I was in full training with a dressage trainer. The dressage trainer wanted me to teach Geronimo a turn on the forehand, and Geronimo didn't understand the aids. So one day Geronimo reared up, and guess what? I took my leg off, I gave on the rein contact, and Geronimo learned, okay, if I rear, the pressure comes off. So really quickly, he learned a great new trick, which was he just stood on his hind legs and the pressure came off. If I had known groundwork, that never would have happened. I never would have had a horse that was rearing. So with Geronimo, we went to a natural horsemanship trainer, Larry Fleming. We went back to the basics. We went back to the rope halter. We taught him how to bend and yield his hindquarters. And he became a very, very good horse. But the problem is that once your horse learns something bad, once they learn an evasion or they learn to rear or buck you off or run away, it's hard to get that out of them. And so what I hope is that with these groundwork techniques that I can help you guys to stay safe, to communicate better with your horse, and to teach your horse the dressage moves. So that's really what this is about, is using groundwork in a practical way to enhance your relationship with your horse and to avoid getting injured or having a major problem like we had with Geronimo. I learned a lot from that experience, but I still wish that Geronimo had never learned how to rear. I wish that I had been able to explain that to him from the ground to avoid having such a problem horse. And the problem is that he wasn't a problem horse. We just weren't explaining it to him right. He's really a good horse. Okay, so let me pull up my slides here. And at the end of today, we will have time for questions. So stick around to the end if you have some questions. Here's our slides. Let me just take a moment to get everything set up the way that I need it to be. I will try to monitor the chat, but it's a little bit tricky. We have a lot of people here, which is so wonderful. It's hard for me to watch all of the comments while I am also talking. Okay, here we go. Full screen. All right. Can you guys all see my screen? I hope. Oops, we're going too fast. Good. Okay. Here we go. So obviously today we are talking about dressage groundwork. And like I said, I learned a lot from the natural horsemanship people, but I've also really adapted the groundwork to apply to dressage. So let me know in the chat why you are here today. So A, you've already enrolled in the masterclass. Okay, I see some A's. B, you want to develop more confident and respectful relationship with your horse. C, I'm not sure that groundwork can help me, but I'm here anyway. So if you're C, I'm really glad you're here and I hope I can convince you. D is I don't want to get hurt. And E is I want to teach my horse to piaffe in hand. Okay, a lot of B's, some C's, some E's, good. It's fun to teach them to piaffe in hand. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being here today. I hope that I can give you some value and make your time worthwhile. So groundwork is your key to develop respect, confidence, and trust with your horse. In today's training, we're going to talk about why groundwork is important. I'm going to give you practical exercises that you can do to get more respect, how groundwork can help you to improve your dressage movements. And then at the end, we're going to talk about the masterclass that I have on groundwork. So there was a study done in Germany that was actually looking at rein length and the amount of tension in the reins. But the study came up with a surprising finding. Horses who were regularly trained in groundwork had lower heart rates when being ridden than all of the other horses. So that basically meant that horses that the riders did groundwork with them were more relaxed under saddle. And this was a scientific study that proved this. So that's it right there, a really good reason why you should be doing groundwork. So I'm Amelia. I am a Grand Prix rider and trainer. I live in Southern California. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, I'm a dressage rider, but I also spent a lot of time doing natural horsemanship, breaking young horses, dealing with problem horses. And I saw a lot of value in the groundwork that they do in natural horsemanship and that I had to do in order to be able to ride young horses and problem horses. So I'm really passionate about sharing my knowledge with as many people as possible and helping you to stay safe and also enjoy your horse. So let's rewind about 15 years ago. The photo on the left there is from the summer after I graduated college. Or no, high school. I was 18 years old. So I moved out and I went and worked for Mindy Bauer. She's Buck Brannaman's sister-in-law. And those 10 horses are the 10 horses that I rode every single day. And the fact that I could hold them all like that was definitely a testament of all the groundwork that I did with those horses. I learned so much by riding difficult horses, riding young horses, and developing my skills on the ground. So the photo on the right there is actually a photo of Geronimo and me doing a little groundwork with him at Larry Fleming's. And again, at the time I was disappointed that I wasn't, doing the young riders of dressage, but I was learning so much by dealing with these difficult horses and teaching them things from the ground. There's 3 main reasons to do groundwork. The first one is safety. The second one is communication. So learning timing, feel, and balance so that you can communicate more effectively with your horse. And then the third one is dressage. So you can teach your horse a lot of the dressage moves from the ground. And often it's way more productive and way better to introduce it from the ground than in saddle. Like I talked about with Geronimo, if I'd have taught him the aids for the turn on the forehand from the ground, he never would have started rearing. Okay, let me know in the chat if you've been stepped on or kicked or bitten or bucked off. I know that I have had all these things happen to me. I've been stepped on, I've been kicked. Yes, all of the above. Okay, I think if you've been around horses, all of these things have happened. So one of the biggest reasons to do groundwork is to stay safe because many of these accidents can be avoided with some simple groundwork exercises. It's really important that you don't let your horse get away with little things. So it might seem like a little thing when your horse just kind of steps into your space, but that becomes a bigger issue if you allow that when something spooks your horse and your horse thinks it's okay for them to come into your space and suddenly they step on your foot and smash your foot. So you need to make groundwork a habit. Whenever you're handling your horse on the ground, you need to be aware of all of those little things they do when they put their head up, when they step towards you, when they barge past you, because those are the beginnings of an accident brewing. And it's really, really important that you're always aware of those little things and fixing your horse all the time and demanding the respect so that when your horse gets scared, they don't end up kicking you or stepping on you. So safety first, always, whenever you're working your horse on the ground, put a helmet on. This is a big one. I can't tell you how many times you're down there picking your horse's feet and they go to kick at a fly and they hit you in the head. People used to make fun of me because I would always have a helmet on. I would drive around from barn to barn with my helmet on because it was just easier and I didn't want to forget it. But it saved me so many times on the ground having a helmet on. Gloves so that your hands don't get ripped apart, and boots. You should not be wearing flip-flops or Crocs. As much as I love my Crocs, they're not good to wear around the horses. Let's talk about how horses think. This comes from a book called Horse Brain and Human Brain, which is a really, really good book. But basically, with our brains, what happens is we collect sensory information that goes to the thalamus, and that prepares the body to do something. But first, the stimulus goes to the prefrontal cortex, where we decide whether or not we need to panic and run away. So horses don't have that prefrontal cortex. So basically, the stimulus goes straight to the motor cortex. So let's say you walk into the arena and there's a new chair sitting there. As a human, we see the chair and we kind of process like, okay, well, it's still the same arena. And yes, there's a new chair, but I don't need to panic and run away. The horses, they just see the new chair and they immediately go to their motor cortex, which is to spin and run away. So we're not going to change how the horse's brain works. But what we can do is that when that motor cortex is stimulated, we can teach our horse to stay on the edge. So when your horse goes to spin, you can teach your horse to bend and do a one-rein stop. When your horse goes to stick their head straight up in the air and panic about something, you can teach your horse to do a pull release and put their head down. So that's really important to understand, is that horses' brains are different than our brains. Now, horses' vision is also very different than our vision. And there's a really great video. I'll have Joellen can put that link in the chat. I'll also share the link later. But there's a great video that shows the difference between what we see and what the horse sees. So on the top there, you see the jump. That's what we see. The bottom is what the horse sees. So the horse's vision is not nearly as defined as ours. On the right there, again, same thing. You see how the top view is showing what the rider sees. The bottom view is showing what the horse sees. So horses have more peripheral vision, but they cannot see very well right in front of them. That's why sometimes if your horse is scared of something in front of them, you want to kind of weave back and forth so they can see it from the side. Horses also cannot see the color red, and it takes horses a long time for their pupils to adjust. So like if you go from the sunlight into a dark arena, it takes horses longer for their eyes to adjust to that. And horses have more cones, so they see more like quick, subtle movements and not so much clear definition. I highly recommend you guys checking out that link when you have time later. It's a cool video that just shows you how the horse sees things. So with some simple groundwork exercises, you can actually change your horse's body language. So you can change your horse from being either like super excited and nervous or angry into more relaxed. You can see the photo on the left there. The horse is, I'm asking, that's Mercurio. I'm asking him to just bend towards me and drop his neck down. And that simple movement puts him in a more relaxed frame. So this is a great exercise that you guys can try out. Next time when you're leading your horse just from their stall to the cross ties, practice a little red light, green light. So just walk along, stop, See what happens. Does your horse stop with you, or do they just run over the top of you? What about if you back up? If you back up, does your horse back up? So it should be like, I always practice this with my horses. I walk forward and I stop. When I stop, they should stop. When I walk forward, they should stop. If I back up, they should back up. Practice this. It doesn't take any extra time to check in with your horse when you're leading them. And it's really clear indicator of whether your horse is following you and whether or not your horse is in tune with you. You should be doing this all the time. So the way that we communicate with our horses, whether we are riding them or whether we are on the ground, is with an aid and a release. So the aid is pressure and the release is the relief of the pressure. On the top left there, I'm asking my horse Luigi to back away from me. So you can see my body language. I have my hand raised. I'm stepping my energy towards him and I'm asking him to back away from me. Now, I don't particularly like how high his head is in that photo because that's a little bit of a sign of resistance, but it's clear that I'm making an aid. And then you see the bottom there is the release. So notice how Luigi has backed away from me. There's more distance between me and him, and there's a relief of pressure. This is the fundamental of everything we do with our horses, whether we're riding or whether we are on the ground with them, is that we're asking something. When they do what we want, we release. One thing that's really important to remember is to reward the slightest try. So the instant that your horse starts to back away, reward it and then start again. This is how you refine your communication with your horse to where your aids become more and more subtle. Same thing goes for under saddle. You know that you want your horse to be responding to invisible aids. You don't want to have to like kick your horse 20 times just to get them to walk forward. Okay, so who has trouble with trailer loading? This is another important groundwork thing. And basically, if you have a problem with trailer loading, you have a groundwork problem. So there's something else in your groundwork in the way that your horse is leading and responding to you on the ground that just gets a lot worse when the trailer is there. Now, one thing that's really important is that whenever your horse is near the trailer or looking in the trailer, you need to a little bit release the pressure. And whenever your horse looks away from the trailer or they drag you to the other side of the parking lot, there needs to be pressure. And oftentimes we do the opposite. So part of the reason that we have so many trailer loading issues is that you get the horse up to the trailer and all of a sudden you start beating on it and clucking at it and putting all this pressure on it. And then your horse freaks out and goes running backwards and tries to pull away, and you end up on the other side of the parking lot and you think, oh, shoot. And you just stand there and you kind of think, well, now what do I do? So in that situation, your horse is getting released away from the trailer. Your horse is getting released by dragging you to the other side of the parking lot. And while you're sitting there in frustration, your horse is getting rewarded for not being near the trailer. And that's why trailer loading becomes such a problem, is because instead of the release being in the trailer, the horse gets released when they drag you to the other side of the parking lot. So the same premise applies to riding. Let's say that you're riding your horse on a circle. Whenever your horse is going on the circle line, there's release from pressure. So your legs are still on your horse, but they're not actively kicking your horse. If your horse either falls in or out, they run into the pressure of your leg. But so long as they're going where you want them to go, there's release. So that's why groundwork is really cool, is because it's the same premise. It's all about pressure and release. Horses are always searching for that release. They want to be left alone. They want to be told that they're good and praised. And so the way that you interact with your horse, and the more that you can teach your horse to seek the release and to find the release, that carries over to when you're riding them. Okay, so this is a photo of me, yes. Who has ever had that little voice inside your head where you get on your horse, and you say, I just don't have a good feeling about this. Like, my horse just feels so tense and their back is so tight, and this is just not going to go well. Okay, I see a lot of you guys in the chat there. Jackie, Steph, Peggy, Catherine. Okay, I've had this voice in my head and I've ignored it, and it usually doesn't go well. I ended up with a few broken bones, and not from this photo, but from a different time. So what should you do when you feel that tension and you think this is not going to go well? You should probably get off and do some groundwork. And at the time, it may feel inconvenient. Like when I had that voice in my head and I ignored it and I broke my collarbone and my ribs, I was like, I should get off and lunge this horse. And I thought, oh, it'll be fine. I'm in a hurry. I just need to get this horse ridden and I don't have time to get off and do a little groundwork. It takes a lot more time to heal from broken bones than it takes to get off and do a little groundwork. But here's the thing, is that you need to practice groundwork before you get to this. So you need to have some tools. You need to know that you can get off and bend your horse and yield the hindquarters and ask them to back up and do a turn on the forehand or put them on the lunge line. You have to have those tools in your toolbox so that you can use them when you really need them. The one rein stop is a really, really useful tool that you can use for a horse that wants to rear or bolt or buck. Basically, in a one rein stop, you ask the horse to bend their head around to basically to the stirrup, and you want the hind end to disengage and that inside hind leg to step under. It's really important that you teach your horse the one rein stop from the ground first. If you go to do a one rein stop on a horse that is very stiff and that doesn't know how to bend, they will fall over. So that's where the groundwork comes in. With every single young horse or problem horse that I ride, I teach them to bend from the ground. I teach them to yield their hindquarters so that when I get on them, I have that tool in my toolbox. Like I said, I rode a lot of young horses and problem horses. That was my whole business for many, many years. It wasn't that I was better at like staying on the horses when they bucked or went crazy. It was that I had tools on the ground that I could teach the horses things on the ground so that when I got on them, I could stay safe and I could communicate with the horse. So groundwork gives you confidence. Groundwork clarifies for you and your horse expectations for the ride. It gives you the opportunity to give an aid, notice the horse's answer, and release or reward your horse. This basic communication will help your ride go smoothly. So I'm just like you guys, I love to ride. I enjoy groundwork, but it's not something that I would, I'd rather ride than do groundwork. But groundwork helps your ride go better, and that is why it is so valuable. When your horse respects you on the ground, they respect you under saddle. So teach your horse respect. They need to pay attention to you every moment, and that starts the second you go to catch them. Is your horse paying attention to you? Does your horse put their head down for you to put the bridle on? Does your horse pick up their feet when you ask them to, or do they just plant their foot more in the ground? Does your horse move around in the cross ties? When you go over to, like when you switch from the left side to the right side, does your horse move over, or is it impossible to get your horse to move away from you? All of these little respect things carry over to the riding. And that is why groundwork is really important. Okay, let's see. Kirby says, how do you get their attention back? In general, like when I lose my horse's focus, the first thing that I do, like say I'm just standing by my horse and they put their head up and go look at something. I use a little bit the lead rope and the halter, and I just ask the horse to look towards me. And then I put a little pressure on the halter and ask the horse to lower their head. Okay, which of these dressage concepts or movements are you most struggling with? Let me know in the chat. Suppleness, contact and connection, throughness, lateral work, transitions, relaxation, collection, piaffe, all of them. Okay, suppleness. Okay, so the really cool thing about this groundwork is that you can work on all of those things from the ground. So you can improve contact and connection, you can improve suppleness, you can work on lateral work, you can work on transitions, all of this stuff you can work on from the ground. I asked the Amelia's Dressage Club on Facebook this question, and someone put flying changes, and I thought, can you work on flying changes from the ground? In a sense, yes, because you can teach your horse like walk, canter transitions. You can teach your horse to be more supple and more through and more collected. All of that stuff will help your flying changes. I've never done flying changes on the long lines or anything, although I know you can. So, but the point being, a lot of this stuff you can improve from the ground. And how do I work on this? So sometimes, like if I know that I have a horse that's kind of stiff and not very supple, I might spend 4 or 5 minutes on the ground, just bending the horse both ways and kind of loosening them up before I get on them. Other times, I might be in the middle of the ride and I might be really struggling with like, gosh, I cannot get my horse off my right leg, or I just cannot get my horse connected, or I can't get my horse to back up. There's times that I'll get off in the middle of my ride, spend 5 minutes on the ground, and then get back on the horse. So you can really adjust how groundwork fits into your routine. But oftentimes it's a lot better to work on this stuff from the ground. You can be much more effective when you get off and do some of it from the ground versus trying to argue with your horse and get in a fight with your horse from the saddle. Okay, Julie's asking about how about groundwork for impulsion? So absolutely, if you have a lazy horse, like that leading exercise, just go, stop, go, stop, go, stop. Work on the driving aids, work on the reaction that when you step towards your horse, they yield their hindquarters away from you. For sure, you can work on impulsion from the ground and get your horse more respectful of the driving aids from the ground. So this is a little glimpse inside some of the exercises that I have in the Dressage Groundwork Masterclass. One of my favorite segments of the course is the Dressage Groundwork segment. So you can teach your horse to bend from the ground. You can teach your horse to go on the bit from the ground. So you can teach your horse that when you put pressure on the bit, they flex at the pole. You can actually teach your horse to stretch down from the ground. And a lot of times, if I have a horse that they just are so high-headed and I can't get them to do a free walk or a stretch circle, I'll teach it from the ground. You can teach turn on the forehand from the ground. You can teach leg yield. You can teach shoulder in and renvers from the ground and half pass. You can teach throughness from the ground. So that is really the beauty of this, is that the groundwork can help you with your dressage and can make you a much more effective dressage rider. So suppleness from the ground. Every horse has a hollow side and a stiff side. Most horses are hollow to the left and stiff to the right. When you can work on this from the ground, it pays dividends for when you get on them, particularly with a young horse or with an older horse. Working on that stiff side, so working on that right side, when you do it from the ground, not only is it easier for the horse because they don't have to carry you around on their back, but it also allows like their muscles in their back to just get rid of some of that tension before you sit on them. So teaching a horse to bend to the left and bend to the right from the ground is huge. Like whenever I have a horse or a student that is having a lot of trouble on that right side, I say, okay, we need to address this from the ground. Because if you are getting too much pressure with your horse, if you're getting into a fight with your horse under saddle, it's going to go badly. Your horse is going to do like Geronimo. They're going to rear or fling their head up or learn some kind of evasion. When you have the skills to do it from the ground, you can get through it much more successfully, and it's much better for you and for the horse. Lateral work, I always teach from the ground first. Again, because I don't want to get in a fight with my horse when I'm on them, and I can be way more effective from the ground. The other reason that I like to do groundwork to introduce the lateral work is that you can actually see the horse's hind leg cross over. Sometimes when you're on the horse, you're kind of like, I don't know, like, are they even crossing over, or what is that hind leg doing? So that's another really good benefit of teaching the lateral work from the ground. Contact and connection is another one that you can introduce from the ground. A really great exercise is just like I'm showing there. I have the reins over the horse's head. I have a left rein and a right rein. So it's basically like I'm riding the horse from the ground. And you can just work on walk, halt transitions, just like you would do under saddle, trying to keep your horse round and connected on the bit. The horse will do all the same things on the ground that they do under saddle. So they'll try to put their head up, or they won't walk forward when you ask them to walk forward. Notice that I have a whip. And so you'll see on the photo on the left, the horse is at the halt and my whip is pointing up in front of the shoulder. So that's like halt position with the whip. The photo on the right, where the horse is piaffing, the whip is down by the hind leg. So your whip replaces your leg. When you're riding your horse, your leg is the driving aids. When you're working your horse in hand, your whip is the driving aids. Someone asked a question last weekend, how can you make sure that your cues for dressage moves learned on the groundwork translate to cues under saddle? So you can see here, it's very similar. I'm holding the reins, so the contact and the connection is more or less the same. And then I don't have my leg, but my whip is replacing the driving aids. So the horse will transfer the knowledge. If you teach it on the ground, they will connect the dots when you get in the saddle. I saw in the chat, someone was asking about lunging. Should you lunge your horse? It depends. It depends on how you do it. It depends on your horse. It depends on the age of your horse. You want to be careful if you have an older horse that just goes ballistic on the lunge line, because you don't want to injure your horse. Lunging, when done correctly, should be just like riding. So you can see the photo there on the left. The horse is on the bit. The horse looks more or less relaxed. He's submissive. Incorrect lunging is like on the right. You don't want your horse to be leaning in and tearing around 1,000 miles an hour and getting themselves all worked up. That's not productive. Lunging should be to prepare your horse physically and mentally to be in a state so that when you get on them, they're ready to work. So it's not so much about to lunge or not to lunge, it's about how to do it correctly. And it's really important that you teach your horse to be respectful and on the aids when you're lunging them, not that they're just going wild on the lunge line. That's not helpful. So long lining, again, long lining is a really, really useful tool, but there's a lot of prerequisites before you put side reins on your horse, before you long line your horse. You need to really make sure that they understand how to give to the pressure. I've had situations where when I was younger and I just kind of not knowingly attached side reins to a young horse that didn't really understand the contact, and they can really get scared. So it's really important that you do groundwork sequentially. So you need to teach your horse to put their head down with a pull release. You need to teach your horse to bend to the left and bend to the right. You need to teach your horse a little bit like those walk, halt, walk transitions, contact and connection, turn on the forehand, lunging with side reins. All of that stuff you need to do before you put long lines and side reins on your horse. That's also really important for you as you're developing your groundwork skills. Long lining is very difficult. So you need to feel very comfortable with, just simple bending and pull release and turn on the forehand. You need to be pretty comfortable with all of that stuff before you start teaching your horse to long line. And that's why I'm pretty hesitant about putting out videos about long lining your horse, because you can get in a lot of trouble when you do it incorrectly or when you don't teach your horse the right basics before you introduce the long lines. Okay, who has a young horse or a new horse? I know a lot of you guys, some of you guys that have already started the Groundwork Masterclass have young horses. Kimberly has a 4-year-old. Olga has a young horse, 18-month-old. Okay. So especially if you have a young horse or if you have a new horse, groundwork is essential. My whole business used to be starting young horses. And the reason that everyone sent me their young horses was because I had such a framework of exercises to do with young horses on the ground where I could break things down and introduce things to them and more or less teach them the aids, teach them how to bend, teach them how to go on the bit, teach them how to accept the rider from the ground so that when I got on them, I didn't have so many issues. So it's really important when you have a young horse or when you have a new horse that you want to avoid a big accident or a big incident. And the more that you can break things down for the horse, the more that you can teach them these things from the ground, that will carry over to under saddle so that when you get on, that you have tools and ways to communicate with the horse. Like going back, remember at the beginning of this presentation, I showed the slide about the way the horse's brain works. So horses are going to see stimulus, and that's going to go directly to their motor center in their brain, and they're going to react. And you need to have a tool, something that you can do to interrupt or to channel that reaction. And all of that comes from what you teach your horse on the ground. Okay, here's where we get to the fun part. So a really fun thing to do is, as a culmination of all this groundwork, is teaching your horse to piaffe from the ground. It's really cool when you have that feeling and you get the technique and you start to see your horse dance a little in hand. Like everything though, in dressage, there's building blocks. And I've definitely been guilty of just when I was starting to learn how to teach a horse to piaffe in hand, you just think, okay, well, I'm just gonna hit him with a whip and take the contact, and it doesn't work. So you really need to teach your horse sequentially the piaffe. And it starts with a lot of the other groundwork that I talked about earlier, like teaching them to bend, teaching them to do a turn on the forehand, teaching the leg yield. Then you start teaching leg lifting. So Basically, the idea that when you touch them with the stick, I like to use a bamboo for the leg lifting, they lift and hold their leg up. You want to get where they lift the left hind and the right hind. It might take, depending on the horse, 2 or 3 weeks just working on the leg lifting. Then you take the leg lifting forward into the walk. So you start trying to do where you lift the inside hind leg while the horse is walking forward. And then eventually your horse starts offering some little baby half steps, which is always really exciting. Whenever your horse starts to get frustrated and you feel like your horse is just like running over the top of you or not listening to you, you have to go back to the basics. So you have to go back to walk, halt, walk, or the simple leg lifting. So the groundwork is a lot like dressage. You're always going back to those basic fundamentals, the basic pressure and release. How much groundwork should you do? So my mantra for this is as little as possible, but as much as needed. I for sure would rather ride than do groundwork. However, I have learned, sometimes the hard way, that you can be a lot more effective and stay a lot safer when you do it from the ground. There's times that with a young horse, for example, that you might need to spend 20 or 30 minutes doing groundwork before you can safely get on the horse. Other times, if you have an older horse that you know really well, maybe all it is just when you lead your horse from the stall to the cross ties, you check in with them, a few walk, halt, walk transitions, you make sure you can get them to lower their head, and you just know that horse so well that you feel like you can just get on them. But you need to be able to adjust. So some days you need to do more groundwork, other days, maybe not at all. And I don't like to drill the groundwork moves. I like everything that I do on the ground to be very practical. It's all for a reason, whether it's to get the horse physically a little more supple or physically where I need them to be, or whether it's that I need them mentally to be in a better frame of mind. So you need to be able to adjust. And definitely, I like, even with Harvey is my Grand Prix horse. He's a really special horse. He struggles a little with the connection and he wants to be strong in the left and not so much in the right rein. And I'm always like, oh, I don't have time for groundwork, I'm just going to get on. But if I spend some time with him, like once a week, just working him a little in hand on the ground, it helps me so much when I get on him. So sometimes you need to just take that time on the ground because it pays dividends for when you get on your horse. Okay, so with that, I know a lot of you guys still have questions and I'm going to open it up for questions at the end. Who here has already enrolled in the Dressage Groundwork Masterclass? Yes, I see a lot of you guys are here. I'm so passionate about groundwork, and creating this course has been really fun for me because, like I said, I've tried to make it really practical, really useful, bite-sized pieces that you guys can use to stay safe, communicate better, and improve your dressage. So if you haven't yet and you want to learn more about the masterclass on groundwork, head over to ameliasdressageacademy.com/groundwork. You have until Saturday to enroll in the course, and then the course will be closed. I probably won't do the course again until the end of the year. So now's your chance. The first 10 people that sign up during this webinar, I have 10 more hats like this. Actually, Joellen has them, so she'll be sending those to the first 10 people that sign up during the webinar today. And you'll also get a pin there. And also, if you sign up by Wednesday, you will get a free bonus workshop on ladder work. For those of you guys that have already signed up, if you log into your Teachable, you should already be added to this bonus workshop on lateral work. So this is a really great workshop where I go into lateral work on the ground, but also more about how to introduce the lateral work under saddle and the theory of lateral work, because I know that this is a sticky point for a lot of you guys. The Groundwork Masterclass is a lifetime course. There's a lot of material. There's over 50 exercises in the course. It's not something that like you're just going to be done with in a month. It's a reference guide that you can always go back and reference when you have a new horse, or when you're struggling with something under saddle, or when you have an accident or something. It's something you always can go back to. So there's 8 modules, everything from Groundwork Basics. That's like how to put the bridle on, how to deal with your horse in the cross ties, groundwork with a rope halter, desensitizing from the ground, so flag work, getting your horse over when they're afraid of the rope around them, all of that stuff. And then the dressage groundwork section, which I talked a little bit about earlier. Lunging, there's a section about riding your horse. So that section's really about how to transfer all this stuff on the ground to when you get in the saddle. And then the 7th and 8th segments of the course are about piaffe, introducing the piaffe from the ground, and long lining. So those are the more advanced sections of the course. For those of you guys that have already enrolled, I would recommend that you go and kind of look through the exercises. You don't need to do every single exercise, but kind of look at what you most need help with, and then introduce those exercises to your routine. We will have office hours. So office hours are where you can ask me questions, because I know a lot of you guys have questions in the chat. You'll be able to ask me more one-on-one your specific questions, and you can also submit videos to me where I can give you a little more direct feedback and suggestions for how to improve your groundwork. I've already seen some videos from people. This is a look inside the exercises in the groundwork course. It's a lot. Like I said before, you don't need to do all of them. It's a lifetime course. So pick through and see like, okay, I need to work on teaching the stretch from the ground or backing my horse up. Pick out those exercises, start working on them. And then as you have time, work on developing your groundwork skills. There's also an app, so you can download the Teachable app on your phone and be able to access the videos through your phone, which is very convenient. And one really cool thing that I've done is I have created a groundwork test. So sometimes I think that there should be a dressage test that is all about groundwork, because it is so important and it does transfer over. So a challenge to people that are taking the course is to be able to complete this groundwork test. The groundwork test includes leg yields. It includes turn on the forehands from the ground. It includes rein back from the ground. And you'll be able to submit a video of you doing the groundwork test, and then I'll score it and give you some feedback. Many of the same principles that the judges look for when you're in a dressage test are the same when you're doing groundwork. So unity, impulsion, submission is the same on the ground as in under saddle. And then the correct use of the aids. So I'm excited to see how you guys do with the groundwork test. And here's some testimonials. I just love this one. So my biggest takeaway, which was quite an epiphany, is that you can train your horse on the ground and they learn it when you get on them. I taught my horse how to do a turn on the forehand and also how to step under herself by using techniques you showed me. It's amazing to me that they can learn from the ground, and then when you get on, they already know it. It's like magic. And that's so true. I just love that quote because it's like, rather than getting in a big fight with your horse, sometimes you just can get off, teach them a little something, show them where to put their body on the ground. And when you get on them, it's like magic, like they get it. So here's from Ginger, who's already enrolled in the course. So the course has loads of bite-sized topics to help you build a respectful and safe relationship with your horse. I find that most trainers mostly spend time teaching you to ride and they ignore groundwork. I've been riding 7 years and I wouldn't say I have a problem on the ground with my horses, but there are still little things that I can improve and they matter. Amelia has loads of little tips on how to do things better. So there you go. I think all the little things on the ground that sometimes we ignore do carry over to under saddle. So going back to my first story with Geronimo, when I was at Larry's, I remember that Geronimo, when you take him back to his stall and you take the halter off, he would always like rip his head out of the halter and run away. And that might seem like a little thing, but to a really sensitive horse, it was a sign of disrespect and a sign of him not wanting to be with me. And I remember Larry saying to me, he said, I don't care if it takes 1,000 times. You do not let that horse go until he stays there quietly with his head down while you take the halter off. It's all those little things that, you know, you kind of think, well, that's not really a big deal, but it is a big deal. And the horse is always learning and thinking about how you react with them on the ground, and it carries over to under saddle. So the course comes with a 30-day money back guarantee. So if you get the course and you just look through it and it doesn't help you, send me an email. I'll send you your money back. It's USDF approved. We don't know how many credits you're going to get yet, but USDF will approve the course and you have lifetime access. So I tried as much as possible when designing this course to ask you guys what you were struggling with, and then to make little videos that you guys can do to help you with this. So like I have issues with stiffness. I can't get my horse to understand, hand walking your horse. Since this is the first time that I'm doing the course, I'm also going to be adding more videos as we go through. So if you enroll in the course and you feel like I'm having trouble with this issue, then come to office hours, send me an email, and I'll put in another video if there's something that I missed. Okay, we're going to open it up for questions here in a minute. If you're on the fence about joining the masterclass, you can let me know why, and hopefully I will tell you whether or not the course is for you. The other thing, Joellen, if you'll put in the chat there, Joellen is our director of happiness. She's my mother and she helps me so much, but she has offered to do some one-on-one Zoom sessions with you guys if you're unsure about whether or not the course would be useful to you. So the link is a Calendly link that we'll put in the chat. If you want to set up a call with Joellen and just kind of talk through whether or not you should enroll in the course. Office hours. I saw there were a few people asking about office hours. So we're going to be doing office hours next Sunday, which will be an orientation call. The office hours are totally optional. So all of the material is available on Teachable for you guys to look at your convenience anytime. The other thing on Teachable is that you can ask me your questions there. So below every video, there's a comments box where you can type a question. It sends me an email notification and then I will respond. The nice thing about office hours is that we can talk more one-on-one. So if you're having a specific issue, bring your question to office hours and we can talk about it. You can also send me little video clips. That's like the most useful. If you are having a trouble, and so you can just have someone take a 30-second video with the cell phone, send it to me, and then I can show those during office hours and we can talk about it. But the office hours will all be recorded. Depending on how many people enroll in the course, I will add more if we need more. I know some of you guys are saying, but I'm just not coordinated. I'm not effective on the ground. So learning is hard because it's something you don't know. That's a quote from Dennis the Menace, and Tom Dorrance also used to repeat that. I put these photos in here because when I was that summer when I worked for Mindy and I was doing all the young horses, I learned how to rope, and it was really hard because it was a skill. I didn't know how to do it. I felt really awkward. Same thing happened when I was first learning how to do this groundwork, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I feel like I have never been around a horse before. And it took time, it took dedication. You have to kind of get over that barrier. It's not going to be easy when you've never done groundwork before to start learning how to apply the aids, how to get your horse to respect you from the ground. There's a learning curve, and you have to get through that, because in the end, once you have the skill, it's so invaluable, and it's going to help you with a new horse, or when you're handling your friend's horse, or it's just a really valuable skill, but you definitely have to get over that hurdle of feeling really awkward and really like it's hard, like anything. Okay, I'm going to skip these so that we can get to your questions, but I always like to end my presentations with a few quotes. So thinking ahead is the key to good horsemanship. If the horse wants to leave and we don't feel that until the first step has already been stepped, then we create resistance when we ask the horse to wait. Everything becomes so much softer when we already feel the movement before it even happens and are able to respond to it early on. That's really what you can start to do on the ground and also under saddle. You have to start to feel your horse and have like a horse sense and feel when their energy comes up or when you lose their attention, that you just feel that quicker and you can fix it quicker. And that's the art of horsemanship. The quote on the bottom there, the horse is always free to express itself. And if something goes wrong, it is always because the human does not communicate clearly enough. So it's our job that we need to find ways to communicate better with our horses. Just like at the beginning, I talked about Geronimo. He's a fabulous horse. He has taught so many people how to ride. Little kids can ride him now. He just had one of my mother's students just got her bronze medal on Geronimo. I mean, he's a fabulous horse. And yet my trainers told us that he was dangerous. And they told my mom that Geronimo was like an abusive boyfriend, which is not the case. It was the fact that we didn't break things down. We didn't communicate effectively with him. And he learned that if he reared, the pressure came off. And then the last quote, let all your actions always be guided by love and responsibility towards your horse. That's my favorite one. So love and responsibility towards our horse. Okay. There we go. How are all of you guys doing? Good? Yay. Are we inspired? I hope so. Okay, let me get to the questions. I think, are there any questions that you've come across that I should answer?
There are a lot of questions about the class. One of them is Kimberly Baker asked early in the afternoon. What I have a challenge transferring the groundwork to riding dressage. How will this course help me figure out how to do that?
Yeah, and I think that that is really the beauty of this course is that there's a disconnect. Like the Western people do a lot of groundwork. Like, there's a lot of groundwork trainers like Buck Brannaman and Ray Hunt and Pat Pirelli, and they do useful stuff with the horses on the ground. But there's a little bit of a disconnect as far as how can I actually teach my horse dressage concepts from the ground. And that's really what I've tried to include in the masterclass is first of all, teaching your horse some basics with the halter, with the rope halter, but then let's put the bridle on and let's teach our horse with contact and connection the same things. So turn on the forehand and leg yield and shoulder in and half pass. So that's kind of where I've taken what a lot of the Western and natural horsemanship people do, but then taking it to the next level as far as making it more practical for dressage concepts.
Here's another question. Johanna wants to know, do you recommend doing groundwork before you ride every time, or do you recommend riding some sessions and then doing groundwork separately?
That's a good question. And like I said, it really depends on your horse and you need to be able to adjust. So some days like it's hot and you've ridden all week, maybe you just need 2 minutes of groundwork. Other days, maybe it's 30 minutes of groundwork, or maybe you don't ride at all. So like everything with horses being flexible. In the masterclass, I do have what I call my 3-minute groundwork routine. And it's just a few little simple things that you can do on the ground to check in with your horse. And of course, that time, some days, maybe it's 3 minutes, some days, maybe it's 30 minutes, but there's definitely things that you should check out with your horse every single day before you get on them to just have a feel for how your horse is functioning that day, to kind of check in with your horse. So it depends, but definitely my goal with all my horses is I want to spend most of my time riding, but I also want to stay safe and be effective when I'm in the saddle. So that's where groundwork is really important. Someone was asking about payment plans. So if you go to the payment page, all the way at the bottom, there is a payment plan where you can do 2 payments of $225. So if you can't do the $399 up front, there is that option available. Pam, do I approve giving treats occasionally during groundwork? So no, I do not give my horse, I do not hand feed my horses, just because I think that for the horse, it's enough reward when you just take the pressure away. So when you when you release the pressure, when you take off the driving aids, when the aid goes away, that should be enough. And part of that comes from the natural horsemanship stuff is I don't like it when horses are mouthy or like when they're looking for that cookie, because I just think that it causes too many bad habits. But that's my opinion and everyone is different. Okay, let's see. Oh, someone's having trouble with the $399 not showing. Let me show you guys the payment page quickly. Do we have any other good questions, Joellen?
Yes, there's another good question, particularly about the shoulder. Sometimes when you're doing groundwork, the shoulder falls towards you. How do you really keep the shoulder up and the horse straight on the circle?
Yeah, so again, it's all about pressure and release and getting your horse respectful. A lot of horses have gone their whole life with shoving that left shoulder into you on the ground. So a lot of horses go around and they kind of tip their head to the right and they shove the left shoulder into you. And that's become a really ingrained habit in them. And I I demonstrate in the masterclass. I have a horse that does just that, and I kind of work through how to get him off that left shoulder. You can use either like a whip or a flag, but basically when the shoulder comes towards you, you need to kind of poke them on the shoulder, and the instant that they move away, take the pressure off. So it's pressure and release, but it's definitely breaking a bad habit. And that takes time when your horse has spent however many years shoving you off of their left shoulder, and you suddenly try to break that habit. It's going to take time. But again, it affects your riding. If your horse is always falling in on the left shoulder and pushing you on the ground, they're going to do the same thing when you get on their back. And so that's why it's important. Okay, someone's asking here, if we pay for the course in full, is it access forever? Yeah, so once you purchase the course, you will have lifetime access for it. And I will, like, as people need help and there's more videos that I should add, I will add those, and you will have lifetime access. So it's a really good deal. I think that when I won't offer it again until the end of the year. So if you're if you don't have time right now, or you're not sure, you can get the course and use it when you need it. And, you know, I will add new exercises, and probably next time the price will go up a little bit. So let me see. A few people are having problems with the sale page. So here is what the sale page looks like. So it's ameliasdressageacademy.com/groundwork. And if you click here where it says the winter special, it will take you then to the checkout page, and you'll see you get $51 off when you sign up before Saturday. And you'll also get that free workshop on ladder work. So it's a lot of value for a good price. And then here is what it will look like. Let me see if it will flip over to here. Okay, so this is what it looks like once you get inside the course. And you see there's a lot of material in here. We start with Groundwork Basics. So the aid and the release, the rope halter, how to lead your horse. And then we basically go sequentially, getting things more complicated. So the pull release, disengaging the hindquarters, rein back, desensitizing, and body control. Here's the dressage groundwork section. And then lunging, riding. There's your 3-minute pre-ride groundwork routine. So that's where I just go through, like, here's the 3 exercises you should check out quick before you get on your horse. And then pee off from the ground and long lining. So that's what it looks like inside the course. And what other questions do we have? Let's see. Is the program compatible with a positive reinforcement philosophy, rewarding correct behavior with or without treats? Yes, absolutely. So it's all about pressure and release. So giving an aid and releasing when your horse does the correct thing. And the release is the positive reinforcement. Horses are so sensitive, and they pick up on really small things. So when you release the pressure, the more sensitive that you can get with it, the more that your horse starts to seek that release from pressure. One of my favorite exercises is the pull release exercise. And it's amazing how sensitive your horse can get to where you're just like barely put pressure on their head, and they'll put their head down. There's no reason that you should be using a step stool to put your horse's bridle on when horses put their head down all the time to eat. So that's a little thing, but it's really, really important.
There's another question, Amelia, which is about what age, like when do you think you should start this? What age should you start pee off? And also, is my horse too old to do groundwork?
Yeah, that's a good question. So groundwork, especially with young horses, there's a balance, because it's really important when your horse is young. And by young, I mean like 3 or below, that you don't want to drill the groundwork stuff. The best thing for young horses is that they're out in the field with other horses and just growing up, learning from other horses. And then you're doing some groundwork. Like obviously you need to handle them because they need to have their feet done and they need to have their shots. So you need to teach them basic groundwork stuff. But with a young horse, like under 3 years old, you should not be getting them out and like doing 45 minutes of groundwork every day. That's way too much. They're too young and they need time to develop. But basically like 3 is usually when they get started. So 3 and up, you know, groundwork for sure is something. When I have a young horse, basically between the ages of 3 and 5, I would say, I pretty much do groundwork every single day with a young horse. I even have right now my 6-year-old, he still gets a little tight in his back. And sometimes I'm so tired of doing groundwork and I just want to get on him, but he needs that 5 minutes of just bending and getting his back a little loosened up and moving around before I get on him. Now, as far as the older horses, again, you need to adapt to fit your horse. So with an older horse, doing a lot of tight circles, lunging on older horse incessantly is not a good idea because it's going to cause them to have an injury. So you need to be mindful of that. But with an older horse, teaching them a little bit bending to get them more supple, doing some rein back, doing a little turn on the forehand, that kind of stuff can be really, really helpful with an older horse. And it also can be useful with an older horse for you to develop your skills as far as feeling a bit more coordinated and effective from the ground, so that when you have a younger horse that you can carry that over. Jackie's asking, is the app available for Android? No, sorry. So the app is available only for smartphone or Apple iPhones, but it's not available for Android. But there is, like, if you log into Teachable on your phone through your browser, you can access the course that way, but the app is only for iPhones. So sorry about that. Are there other questions, Joellen?
I think there's another question, which is from Bianca. She's got a very big dressage horse, 17.2 hands, and it spooks and bolts a lot, and she can barely walk it from the paddock to the tacking up area. How would this help her get more control over her horse?
That's a good question. And again, so much of the groundwork is about practicing a little bit. So, you know, you need to have some boundaries and some tools set up with your horse before you have a big problem. So you can't wait until your horse is bolting and running over the top of you. You need to check in with your horse. Like I said, next time you're leading your horse, when you stop, does your horse stop? When you back up, does your horse back up? That's something that you need to practice before you get stepped on, before your horse bolts. So it's always about before what happens, programming that little reaction in your horse's brain so that you have tools to stay safe and to control your horse. Once your horse has learned some bad habits, you can get through them. So if your horse has learned to bolt over the top of you, it's going to take you being really proactive, really aware, really on top of it. And for sure you can get through it, but you have to up your game. And then you have to be really proactive about when you go to the pasture and you're going to lead your horse back to the barn. Before I even open the gate, I would back my horse up, walk forward, back my horse up, walk forward. Don't wait until your horse is bolting over the top of you. Be proactive about it. And then also teach your horse, like you need to take the time to teach your horse to back up from the ground. When I was working for Mindy, someone brought us a horse in a straight load trailer. and they never taught the horse to back up, and we could not get the horse out of the trailer. Like the horse, we were like trying to get the horse to back up, and we couldn't. So finally we just left the horse in the trailer for like 4 hours, and eventually the horse kind of just got out on its own. But teach your horse to back up from the ground. There's no reason that you shouldn't. And also in dressage, you have to do a rein back, and the best way to teach the rein back is from the ground. Okay, what other questions? Some of you guys are having trouble finding the discount page. You should, I also sent out an email, but it should be on ameliasdressageacademy.com/groundwork. If any of you guys didn't get the $51 discount, I can always refund you the difference. So don't worry. What else? Okay, let's see. Robin registered for the course. Yay. I'm really excited for this course. I'm excited for everyone that has registered. So thank you all for being here.
Amelia, there have been several questions about warming up the horse. If you do groundwork, then how do you warm up, like the general rule of 15 minutes to get the synovial fluid flowing? How do you think about that?
Yeah, again, it depends. You should be sensitive to your horse's age, and that I think that always needs to factor in. But some of the stuff, like just asking your horse to bend and yield a little to the side in both directions, asking your horse to back up, all of that stuff should be considered a part of your warm-up. And certainly you need to, like I said, you need to adapt that based on your horse. So with an older horse, I would be more gentle. I wouldn't do so many tight turns. With a younger horse that you feel like you might die if you get on, then you're going to be doing more bending and yielding and being a little bit more aggressive as far as getting them really submissive and on the aids before you get on them. So again, it depends on your horse. It depends on the age. It depends on kind of the issues that you're having with your horse that you need to adjust to fit your horse.
There's a question, Amelia, both about accreditation and about when is this course available and how does it help the community that it's available as a group?
Okay, so yeah, the course is only available to sign up until Saturday, and then we're going to close it off because I want to have a group of students that kind of go through it together, and we have office hours, and then I can make any additions that I need and adjust things based on that group of students going through it. And then we'll do it again in the fall. So yeah, you have till Saturday to sign up, and then we'll do it again at the end of the year. But part of the benefit of taking the course is that it's much more access to me, because I want to answer everyone's questions, and sometimes that gets hard. But when you're taking the course, then there's more one-on-one access where I can be more helpful and specific, where you can say, hey, I'm having this issue. What do I do to solve that? And that's the benefit of enrolling in the course.
There's another question about office hours.
Okay. So office hours are on Zoom like this, but it will be not 200 people. Well, maybe, but I don't think everyone's going to sign up for the course. But the office hours are, you come, you have your questions, you have a video or not, and you ask me your questions. We can talk a little bit back and forth. You can submit your video to me. I can show the video, and that's what the office hours are. So they're an opportunity for you to talk to me about your specific issues. We can problem solve together. And then if I need to, I'll make more videos or adapt things to help figure out how to work with you and your horse, because that is the hard part, is that every horse is a little different, and you need to adjust and adapt your routine to fit your specific horse.
Okay, I have another question, which is about piaffe. So some of my horse isn't quite at the level ready to start piaffe, but can I work on the piaffe even when I'm more of a beginner?
So yeah, and I see there's some other questions too about piaffe when your horse kind of is pushing through you.
Right.
So again, the piaffe, just like in dressage, piaffe is like the Grand Prix of groundwork. There's a lot of other things that you need to do before you start working on piaffe. And so when your horse starts, when you're trying to do the piaffe and your horse starts running over the top of you, you need to go back to walk, halt, walk, rein back, and then go back to just the simple leg lifting exercises. So just like in dressage, when I'm riding Harvey and I have a trouble with my piaffe, I think, okay, what are the basics that are missing? Have I lost the connection? Have I lost the reaction to my leg? So you have to go back to the basics. If you're a more beginner and you want to start working on the piaffe, then all of this stuff that you do with your horse on the ground is laying the framework to working on the piaffe. The leg lifting exercise, where you teach your horse basically that if you touch them with the stick, that you want them to lift and hold their leg underneath of themselves, that's a more kind of basic exercise that you can start doing. One thing that I did with the masterclass is that I ranked all the exercises as either 1-star, 2-star, and 3-star. So either beginner, intermediate, or advanced, so that you can kind of see like, okay, this is a beginner exercise, this is an advanced exercise. If you're having a problem with an advanced exercise, then go back to a more basic exercise. And I also outlined that in a lot of the descriptions, like, hey, you need to be able to do this exercise and this exercise before you start working on the piaffe. Just like dressage, you can't teach your horse a flying change until they understand canter, walk, canter, and collected canter. Okay, should we give my special halter away?
Sure.
Okay, so
email in.
Yeah, so the 9th person to email Joellen, are you going to put your email in there? It's joellennewcomb@gmail.com. So the 9th person to email Joellen, and if you're also enrolled in the masterclass, I'm going to send you my special halter. Maybe it has some good juju on it, but these are, okay, so these are the best halters to use for groundwork. The reason that I like these as opposed to the regular web halter is that the pressure, you can be a little bit more specific with the pressure, and the knots also put pressure on the pressure points on your horse's, on the correct place and your horse's nose. So they're really effective, but I prefer them over a chain because sometimes when you use a chain, the chain just tightens up and then you don't release the pressure. So groundwork is all about pressure and release. This halter has gone with me to some shows, so it's something that I always have in my show trunk. I've used it in some of the videos on the masterclass. The other thing that's important that I like is I don't like to have a metal connector between the lead rope and the halter. I like it to just be all rope, because if you have metal, sometimes when you're doing the groundwork, you kind of like flick the lead rope and you'll bump your horse in the chin with this part, but it's better if it's just rope as opposed to metal. Usually when I put my horse in the cross ties or when I trailer them, I use a leather halter, but for groundwork, this is like really a useful tool to have a rope halter like this in your toolbox. So maybe in a minute, Joellen will check her email and tell us who the winner is.
It is so hard to keep track of everything going on. Another question that I think is really good is about during groundwork, how do you make sure the horse is bending properly and evenly in both the circle to the left and the circle to the right?
So that's something that comes with time. Like we talked about, every horse has a stiff side and a hollow side. So every horse is a little bit asymmetric, and you'll really feel that on the ground. Like you'll feel like they can be really different left and right. It's something that you just need to work on with your horse over time, and kind of go through the sequence of exercises. And it's like stretching, basically. If you want to, you have to work at it. So it's the same thing with the groundwork. You just have to make it a little bit of a habit. Like, okay, for example, my horse Kensington, when I was making the groundwork course and using him, I was like, wow, he's really stiff on the left side. And I thought, okay, I need to make a point of working on that a little bit every day to get him more supple there. So like everything, it takes time, it takes consistency. And if you commit to it, it will get better, maybe just little by little, but it will get better with time. So yeah, we like, this is a double diamond rope halter. And in the masterclass, we go over kind of there's like links to where you can get all of the rope halters and the flags that are the best ones to use for groundwork. But again, it's not essential. I mean, use what you have. Sometimes it's honestly easier to start doing the groundwork with a bridle, because particularly if you have an older horse that's never had any groundwork, they may be very disrespectful in the halter. So sometimes I'll start doing the groundwork stuff with the bit and the bridle, because the horse more understands how to give to the pressure. And then later I'll try to do it with a halter. With a young horse, I almost always do it with the halter first, because with a baby horse, their mouth is very virgin. They've never had a bit in their mouth. And so you want to start doing a lot of the stuff with a rope halter so that you can avoid pulling on their mouth. When I start young horses, I almost always ride them with a rope halter first. So I teach them all this stuff. I teach them bending. I teach them to back up. I teach them the one rein stop. And then when I get on them, I just tie the reins around. So like I have two reins and I get on them first with the rope halter. And then a lot of times what I'll do to transition from the halter to the bit is I'll have the rope halter and then I'll put the bridle over the top, and I'll ride with both the rope halter and the reins. So it just, again, you have to adjust to fit the situation, to fit your horse. In general, I don't like to tie my horses up with the rope halter. I like to use a leather halter for trailering or for tying, because a leather halter will break if the horse panics and pulls back. So again, you have to kind of adjust, but these are really, really super useful. Good things to have in your toolbox. What else? Do we have
Amelia, we have a winner.
We have a winner.
We have a winner.
Who's the winner?
It is Katie Summers. Katie Summers. I got 32 emails.
Katie Summers. All right. Are you here, Katie? Oh, yeah. Good for you, Katie. Good. Okay. I'll send you my special rope halter.
Okay.
With a little love and sweat on it. Okay. Do we have any other questions before we go? I'm sure there's other questions, but that was super fun. I hope that you guys try out some of these exercises, even just the walk, halt, walk, getting your horse to put their head down. All of these little things will carry over to under saddle. And I'm really excited for all of you guys that have already enrolled or are thinking about enrolling and are gonna enroll this week, because now in the winter is like a great time to spend a little extra time with your horse on the ground, because it can be hard to stay consistent. And also when your horse has had some time off, you want to do a little groundwork before you get back on them. So this is like the opportune time to invest in your knowledge and in your skills. Like I said, it's hard to develop a new skill, but we've broken it down, and you just have to work through it and keep working at it, and you will get there. So thank you all for being here today. That was super fun. And we'll see you in the next webinar, or hopefully next Sunday for the orientation call. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.